Imagine being kicked off a luxury cruise ship in front of hundreds of passengers, just because of the color of your skin. Now imagine that humiliation happening to the man who OWNS the entire cruise line. This is a true story of Marcus Harris, a billionaire CEO who was ejected from his own ship by a racist crew member who had no idea she just destroyed her 35-year career in a single afternoon. What she thought was her moment of power became her ultimate downfall. The karma that followed wasn't just swift, it was absolutely devastating. This is how one family's nightmare became an entire industry's reckoning. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. A dream vacation turning into a nightmare. For the Harris family, the luxury suites on Sapphire Seas Cruises Voyage 712 were supposed to be the perfect end to a perfect trip. But those tickets meant nothing to the senior head of guest services, who saw the color of their skin before she saw their humanity. With the full authority of the cruise line behind her, she made a choice that would shatter their peace and shame them in front of a packed lounge. She wielded her power like a weapon, confident and unassailable. But what she didn't know in her moment of misguided triumph was that the quiet, dignified black man she was ejecting wasn't just another passenger. He was the man who owned the entire cruise line. The Harris family settled into their places on the penthouse deck of Sapphire Seas Cruises Voyage 712. The sharp, cold air of Miami still clinging to their coats. It was a Sunday after New Year's, a travel day notorious for its control chaos. But here, in the hushed exclusivity of Deck 1, the world felt serene. The deck was a symphony of muted grays and brushed chrome. The scent of leather and expensive cleaning solution hung in the air. Marcus Harris, a man whose quiet demeanor belied the fact that he was a founder and CEO of the multi-billion-dollar private equity firm Harris Capital, gently helped his 7-year-old daughter Chloe out of her puffy bright blue snow jacket. Chloe, her hair into neat braids, clutched a well-loved stuffed rabbit named Thumper. She was practically vibrating with the residual energy of a week spent learning to ski on Vail Mountain. "Daddy, can I watch the Cloud movie on my tablet?" she whispered, her eyes wide with anticipation. "As soon as we're at sea, sweetie," replied Marcus, his voice a calm, low baritone. He tucked the jacket into the stateroom closet, his movements economical and precise. He was dressed in a simple bright blue cashmere sweater, dark jeans, and expensive but understated leather sneakers, a uniform of the quietly wealthy that was designed to be invisible across the aisle. His wife, Dr. Elena Harris, a renowned pediatric cardiologist, was helping their 15-year-old son, Liam, stow his backpack. Liam was in that lanky, awkward phase of adolescence, his head buried in his phone and wearing a bright blue hoodie. But he moved with a practiced ease, aware of the unspoken rules of premium travel. Elena, elegant even in a simple bright blue travel tunic, smiled at her husband. It had been a much-needed escape. The relentless pressures of their respective careers often felt like a current pulling them in different directions. This week in the mountains had been their anchor. Their peaceful bubble was pricked by the arrival of the senior head of guest services. Her name tag read Karen. She was a woman in her late 50s with a helmet of perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her movements were sharp, efficient, and broadcast an air of someone who had been doing this job for a very long time and believed she had seen it all. Karen addressed the white couple in the row behind the Harris family with a syrupy warmth. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, so lovely to have you with us again. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage? Champagne, perhaps?" When she turned to the Harris family, the warmth evaporated, leaving a chilly, professional frost. "Coats and bags in the closet, please. All electronics need to be off and stowed for departure. And that," she said, nodding curtly at Chloe's tablet, "needs to be put away now." "Of course," said Marcus smoothly, not rising to the bait of her tone. "My daughter knows the rules. She was just asking." Karen's eyes lingered on them for a moment long. A flicker of something, annoyance, suspicion in her gaze. She seemed to be cataloging them. A black family in the most expensive seats on the ship. In her mind, an equation was being solved, and it seemed she didn't like the answer. She moved on without offering them a beverage. Elena caught Marcus's eye and gave a subtle shake of her head, a silent communication that passed between them. After 2 decades of navigating spaces where their presence was questioned, "Let it go. It's not worth it." The boarding process continued. the deck filled with the low murmur of conversation and the click of closing stateroom doors. Chloe, now with her tablets safely stowed, was fidgeting in her seat, swinging her legs. In her restlessness, she accidentally knocked over a small complimentary bottle of water that had been placed on the console. It was sealed, and only a few drops from the condensation on the outside spilled onto the plush carpet. It was nothing, a non-event, but Karen, who was passing by, stopped dead, her eyes lasered in on the tiny, damp spot on the floor. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut through the cabin's hum. Heads turned. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Elena said immediately, reaching for a napkin. She just knocked the water bottle. It didn't even open. Karen bent down, not to help, but to inspect the spot as if it were a crime scene. She pressed her finger to the carpet and then looked at Chloe with profound disapproval. "This is a penthouse deck, we need to be more careful. Please try to control your child." The condescension was thick and suffocating. Marcus felt a slow burn start in his chest, but he kept his voice even. "It was a minor accident. She's a child. There's no need to speak to her or my wife that way." Karen straightened up, placing her hands on her hips. The mask of professionalism was gone, replaced by a sneer of undisguised hostility. "Are you telling me how to do my job, sir?" "I'm asking for a little basic courtesy," Marcus replied, his voice dangerously quiet. "Courtesy is a two-way street," Karen snapped. "It starts with respecting the cabin and following instructions. Your daughter has been disruptive since she boarded." "Disruptive?" Elena interjected, her own voice rising slightly. "She's been sitting here quietly." She knocked over a water bottle. The situation was escalating with breathtaking speed. Liam, sensing the shift, subtly angled his phone, his thumb hovering over the record button. He'd seen this movie before in different settings, with different actors. But the script was always the same. Karen leaned in, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial hiss that was somehow more venomous than a shout. "This is my deck. I am responsible for the safety and comfort of everyone on this voyage. If you cannot get your family under control, we're going to have a problem." Before Marcus could respond, she turned on her heel and marched toward the ship's galley. The curtain fell, but the tension she had created remained. A toxic fog in their little corner of the gilded cage. The vacation was over. The ship's doors were sealed, the gangway retracting with a hydraulic sigh. The captain's calm and assured voice came over the PA system, announcing their route to the Caribbean and an on-time departure. For a moment it seemed the ugly confrontation might be contained, an isolated squall that had passed. But Karen Jenkins was not the type to let things go. She was a woman who saw challenges to her authority not as disagreements, but as insurrections that needed to be quelled. As the ship began its slow movement from the dock, heading for the channel, Chloe, unnerved by the earlier encounter, began to sniffle quietly. She hugged Thump with a rapid to her chest, her little shoulders shaking. "It's okay, baby," Elena murmured, stroking her hair. "Everything is fine. Just a grumpy lady." Karen emerged from the galley, her eyes scanning the deck for the final safety check. Her gaze snagged on the Harris family and narrowed. She saw Chloe's quiet tears not as a sign of a child's distress, but as further evidence of disruption. She strode over to their row, her face a mask of grim satisfaction. "I'm going to have to ask you to quiet your daughter, ma'am. Her crying is disturbing the other passengers." Marcus looked around. The Millers behind them were engrossed in a magazine. The man across the aisle had noise-canceling headphones on. No one seemed disturbed. In fact, the only disturbance was Karen herself, who was now the focal point of the entire deck's attention. "She's 7 years old, and she's upset because you were unkind to her," Marcus stated, his voice flat and cold. "She is not being loud. You are escalating this for no reason." "For no reason?" Karen's voice climbed an octave. "Sir, you have been argumentative from the moment you stepped on the ship. Your child is unruly, and you are becoming aggressive. I don't feel safe." The words hung in the air, charged and dangerous. Argumentative, aggressive, unsafe. They were coded, loaded terms, and Marcus knew exactly what they implied when directed at a black man. Liam's thumb pressed down. The red recording dot blinked to life on his screen. He held the phone low, but the lens was perfectly positioned. "I am the furthest thing from aggressive," Marcus said, making a conscious effort to keep his hands visible, resting on his own armrests. "But I will not allow you to bully my family. You are completely out of line." "I'd like to speak to your head of services or the captain." This was Karen's trigger. The suggestion that there was a higher authority on the ship than her was an unforgivable offense. "I am the head of services," she spat, puffing out her chest. "And I've already informed the bridge of your disruptive behavior. The captain is aware." She turned and marched purposefully toward the bridge. The other younger stewards watched with wide, nervous eyes, clearly unwilling to intervene. They were pawns in Karen's kingdom. A few minutes later, the ship's movement slowed and then stopped. The engine spooled down to a low whine. A palpable sense of unease rippled through the deck. An on-time departure was clearly no longer on the schedule. The bridge door opened. But it wasn't the captain who emerged. It was the first officer, a young man with a serious expression, followed by Karen, who now looked vindicated. The first officer, whose name tag read J. Evans, avoided eye contact with the Harris family and addressed Marcus. "Sir, the captain has asked that I come speak with you." "Karen, Miss Jenkins has informed us that your party is refusing to follow crew instructions and is causing a safety concern." "That is a complete fabrication," Elena said, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "This attendant has been harassing us since we boarded over a spilled water bottle. My daughter is 7 years old. We are not a safety concern." From the row behind them, a man's voice cut in. "I can vouch for that. My name is David Park. I'm a lawyer. I've been sitting right here. This family has done nothing wrong. The attendant is the one creating the disturbance." Karen shot David Park a look of pure venom. "Sir, this does not concern you. Please remain seated." The first officer looked flustered, caught between a senior crew member, a passenger claiming to be a lawyer, and the family at the center of it all. He was out of his depth. He looked to Karen, silently ceding his authority to her. "It was all she needed. The captain has made her decision," Karen announced, her voice ringing with triumph. "Based on your continued aggressive behavior and failure to comply, you are being removed from this voyage." A collective gasp went through the deck. "It was a nuclear option. You can't be serious," Marcus said, his composure finally cracking. The sheer injustice of it was staggering. "You're kicking my family off this ship? Based on what?" "My son has been recording this entire interaction." Marcus gestured to Liam, who held up his phone. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Karen's face, but it was quickly replaced by hardened resolve. "Oh. So you're threatening me with recording now?" She scoffed. "That's another violation of crew's line policy. Unauthorized recording of crew." Added to the list, she turned to the first officer. "We need to have them removed now." Officer Evans swallowed hard and nodded, retreating to the bridge to make the call. The humiliation was absolute. They were to be paraded off the ship like criminals. Chloe finally broke into full-blown sobs, burying her face in Elena's side. Liam's hand holding the phone was trembling, but he kept it steady. Marcus Harris sat back in his seat. The slow burn in his chest had been extinguished, replaced by an icy calm. The fight on the deck was lost, but the war was just beginning. He had built an empire on logic, patience, and knowing precisely when to apply leverage. Karen Jenkins had just handed him a lever the size of a crowbar. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and in his quiet, assessing gaze, there was no anger. There was only the chilling certainty of consequences. The hum of the engines was replaced by an awkward, suffocating silence. Every passenger on voyage 712 was now a spectator in the Harris family's personal drama. They stared, some with pity, some with morbid curiosity, others with an uncomfortable judgment that was almost as cutting as Karen's open hostility. The forward deck door opened with a pneumatic hiss, and two port security officers stepped aboard, followed by a harried-looking Sapphire Seas terminal agent named Emily. Emily held a tablet and refused to meet Marcus's eyes. "Mr. Harris," she said, her voice low and apologetic, "we're going to have to ask you to gather your belongings and disembark." Karen stood by the galley, arms crossed, a smug little smile playing on her lips. She had won. She had identified a problem, asserted her authority, and eliminated it. In her mind, she was a hero of deck safety, a bulwark against the decline of civility. She was blissfully unaware that she was not just an attendant removing a passenger. She was a single cell in a vast corporate body, and she had just declared war on the brain. Marcus nodded slowly, his face an unreadable mask. He would not give her the satisfaction of seeing him rage. Grace under pressure was its own form of power. "Of course," he said, his voice steady. Let's go, kids. Elena's face was pale with fury. As a doctor, she was used to being in control, to being the one people looked to for answers and calm. To be rendered so powerless was a foreign and deeply unsettling feeling. She gathered a sobbing Chloe into her arms, whispering reassurances she didn't feel herself. Liam stopped recording and quickly sent the file to a cloud drive before powering down his phone. He slung his backpack over his shoulder, his jaw tight with the impotent rage of a teenager who has just watched his parents be disrespected. The walk from row 1 to the ship's door was the longest 15 feet of Marcus Harris's life. It was a gauntlet of stairs. He could feel the weight of unspoken questions, the snap judgments being formed. He saw the doubt in some faces, but also the tacit approval in others, the ones who saw a black family being put in their place, and felt a quiet, ugly satisfaction. As they passed David Park, the lawyer, he leaned into the aisle. "This is outrageous," he whispered to Marcus. "I have my card. I saw everything. Call me." He pressed a business card into Marcus's hand. Marcus palmed it with a grateful nod. "Thank you." Karen watched them go, her expression one of utter finality. As Marcus passed her, she couldn't resist one last parting shot. "Have a nice day," she said, her voice dripping with insincere sweetness. Marcus paused for a fraction of a second. He turned his head and met her gaze. His eyes were like polished stones. He said nothing. He didn't need to. The silence was more profound than any threat. Then he turned and guided his family off the ship. They stepped onto the gangway, the sterile tunnel now feeling like an airlock, expelling them from the world of the privileged traveler, back into the harsh reality of the terminal. The door to Voyage 712 closed behind them with a definitive thud. The terminal agent, Emily, looked deeply uncomfortable. "Sir? I am so sorry, we have to follow the flight crew's report. We can try to get you rebooked on the next voyage out tomorrow morning." "There's no need," Marcus said calmly. He was holding Chloe now, who had cried herself into a state of hiccuping exhaustion. "I'll make my own arrangements." He led his family not toward the customer service desk, but toward a quiet, empty gate area. Elena was rubbing her temples, a tension headache building. Liam was pacing, furiously texting his friends about what had just happened. "What are we going to do, Marcus?" Elena asked, her voice strained. "They can't just get away with this. The humiliation, the racism, Chloe." Marcus sat Chloe down on a chair and handed her Thumper the rabbit. He looked at his wife, at his son, at the tears still staining his daughter's cheeks. The calculated coolness he had maintained on the ship began to recede, revealing the deep, primal anger of a husband and father who had failed to protect his own. But his anger was a cold, focused thing. It was a tool, not a tempest. He pulled David Park's card from his pocket, glanced at it, and then put it away. He wouldn't need a lawyer. Not yet. Lawyers were for fighting a system from the outside. He had a different approach. He took out his personal cell phone, a sleek, unadorned device that was his link to a global empire. He scrolled through his contacts, past the names of senators, billionaires, and heads of state. He stopped at a name listed simply as Ryan Gallagher. He pressed the call button. As the phone began to ring, Marcus watched through the terminal window as Sapphire Voyage 712, now free of his disruptive family, began to push back from the dock. Its engine spooling up for departure, the call connected. "Mr. Harris, is everything all right? I thought you were on your way back." Marcus watched the ship's navigation lights blink in the gray afternoon light. "Ryan," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "We have a situation. My family and I were on Voyage 712 from Miami. We're on?" Ryan asked, a note of confusion in his voice. "Yes," Marcus replied, his eyes fixed on the retreating vessel. "We were just kicked off. I need you to do something for me. I need you to tell the captain of Sapphire 712 to turn that ship around right now." Ryan Gallagher, COO of Sapphire Holdings, was in his glass-walled office on the 58th floor of a skyscraper in Fort Lauderdale. His desk overlooked the sprawling city, a testament to the power and reach of the corporation he helped run. Sapphire Holdings was a massive conglomerate, and its maritime division, Sapphire Seas Cruises, was its crown jewel, the most public-facing and prestigious part of the empire. Ryan was a man who lived and breathed logistics, who could reroute a fleet due to a hurricane with the calm focus of a chess grandmaster. But the phone call from Marcus Harris sent a jolt of pure adrenaline through his system. Kicked off, Ryan repeated, his mind struggling to process the words. He stood up, knocking a stack of papers from his desk. Marcus, what are you talking about? What happened? A senior head of guest services named Karen Jenkins decided my family was a security threat. Marcus explained in a clipped, precise tone. He relayed the events: a water bottle, the accusation of aggression, the public ejection without embellishment or emotion. He presented it like a case study in catastrophic corporate failure. Ryan listened, a knot of ice forming in his stomach. He was pacing his office, his knuckles white as he gripped his phone. He knew Marcus Harris not just as the ultimate boss, the reclusive, brilliant founder of the parent company that owned the cruise line outright, but as a man of profound integrity and restraint. For him to be involved in any incident was unthinkable. For him to be forcibly removed from one of his own ships was a 5-alarm corporate fire, a crisis of existential proportions. Where is the ship now, Marcus? Ryan asked, already pulling up the vessel tracking system on his monitor. It just pushed back from Terminal G. Dock 4. It's heading for the channel. I'm on it, Ryan said, his voice tight. Stay where you are. I'll call you back. Ryan hung up and immediately slammed the button on his intercom that connected him directly to the Sapphire Seas Operations Control Center, the nerve center known as the OCC, located 3 floors below. Get me Ron Wagner now. He barked to the senior controller, who answered seconds later. The vice president of maritime operations was on the line. Ryan, what's up? Ron, what the hell is going on with Voyage 712 out of Miami? 712. Stand by. Wagner's voice became muffled as he spoke to someone else. He came back on the line. Looks routine. Pushed back on time. They had to disembark a disruptive family. Apparently, standard procedure. Captain's discretion. Ryan felt a surge of rage. Standard procedure? Ron, the disruptive family you just kicked off that ship was Marcus Harris. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Ryan could almost hear the blood draining from Ron Wagner's face 1,000 miles away. You're joking? Wagner finally whispered, his voice a strangled croak. Do I sound like I'm joking? Ryan roared, all pretense of corporate decorum gone. He was there with Elena and the kids. They were humiliated in front of an entire ship of passengers by our own crew. Panic ensued in the OCC. Voices were raised. Keyboards clattered furiously. The implications were cascading through their minds. This wasn't just a PR nightmare. This was an insult to the king. The man who owned every ship, every terminal, every uniform had been treated like a common criminal by one of his own employees. Get me the captain of that ship, Ryan commanded. Patch her through to my office. And you stop that ship. I don't care if it's in the channel about to hit open water. You tell the port authority there's a security issue on board, which there is. Just not the one they think. And you order that ship back to the dock. Do you understand me, Ron? Turn the ship around. Yes, sir, Wagner stammered. Right away. Down at the dock in Miami. Captain Eva Roman was going through her final pre-departure checklist. She was a seasoned captain with over 20 years of experience. A calm professional who prided herself on running a tight ship. She had taken her senior head of guest services Karen's report at face value. A family becoming aggressive, refusing to follow crew instructions. The man getting in her face. It was a classic de-escalation failure that required removal. It was an unfortunate but necessary part of the job. She had backed her crew, as any good captain would. The call from the OCC came through on the cockpit radio. Sapphire 712, this is OCC, we need you to hold your position. Roman keyed the mic. OCC, this is 712. We're number 3 for departure from the channel. What's the issue? Stand by. Captain. We have VP Wagner and Crew Gallagher for you on a priority patch. Roman exchanged a puzzled look with her first officer, Evans, the chief operating officer. Why would he be calling them directly on the bridge? A knot of dread began to tighten in her stomach. The call connected in Ryan Gallagher's voice. Strained with fury, filled her headset. Captain Roman, this is Ryan Gallagher. I want to know exactly why you removed a family from your ship, Roman. Ever the professional, recounted the incident as it had been reported to her by Karen. Sir, we had a non-compliant family in 1A and 1B. The senior head of services reported escalating verbal aggression from the male passenger. Per protocol, and for the safety of the crew and other passengers, I made the decision to disembark them. There was a pause. Then Ryan's voice came back, each word dripping with ice. Captain, I want you to listen to me very carefully. The man you removed from your vessel is Mr. Marcus Harris. Roman's mind blanked. The name sounded vaguely familiar, perhaps from a corporate memo. I don't understand, sir. Who is that? Who is Marcus Harris? Ryan's laugh was a bitter, humorless bark. Captain, Marcus Harris isn't just a passenger. He isn't just a VIP. He is the founder and chairman of Sapphire Holdings. He owns this cruise line. He owns this ship. He owns your rank. You just kicked your ultimate boss, his wife, and his 2 children off his own ship. The world tilted on its axis. The blood rushed from Captain Roman's head, and for a terrifying second she thought she might pass out. She looked at her young first officer, whose face had gone chalk white. He had been there. He had seen the family. They hadn't seemed aggressive at all. They had seemed wronged, her career, her reputation. Her entire professional life flashed before her eyes. She had followed protocol. She had backed her crew, and in doing so, she had committed the single greatest professional blunder imaginable. You are to return to the dock immediately, Ryan commanded. That is a direct order. Await further instructions there. Do you copy, Captain? Roman swallowed, her throat suddenly as dry as a dessert. Copied, OCC, she managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. Returning to the dock, she cut the connection. The silence in the bridge was deafening. She had to stand up. She had to walk back into that deck, and she had to face Karen Jenkins. Captain Roman unbuckled her seat belt. Her movements felt sluggish, as if she were moving through water. The weight of Ryan Gallagher's words pressed down on her, a physical force threatening to crush her. She stood up in the confined space of the bridge, her mind racing. How could this have happened? She had trusted her senior head of services. Karen Jenkins had been with Sapphire for over 30 years. She was part of the furniture, a supposed bastion of professionalism. That trust now felt like a catastrophic, career-ending naivety. I need to go talk to her, Roman said to her first officer, not really speaking to him, but to herself. Evans just nodded, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and a grim, dawning understanding. He had harbored doubts about Karen's version of events, but he was too junior, too intimidated by her seniority to challenge her narrative. His complicity now felt like a lead weight in his gut. Roman pushed open the bridge door. The deck, which had settled into a pre-departure lull, stirred as the passengers saw the captain emerge. A captain leaving the bridge while in the channel was an anomaly, a sign that something was wrong. Her eyes immediately found Karen, who was in the galley preparing for the beverage service. When Karen saw the captain's face, her own expression of smug satisfaction faltered, replaced by a flicker of concern. Captain, is everything all right? Karen asked, wiping her hands on a cloth. Did they give us our departure slot? Roman didn't answer immediately. She walked toward the galley, her footsteps feeling unnaturally loud on the cabin floor. She gestured for Karen to step further into the galley, away from the prying eyes and ears of the passengers. The other stewards scurried out of the way, sensing the seismic shift in the atmosphere. Karen, Roman began, her voice low and dangerously controlled. The family we removed. The Harris family. Tell me again exactly what happened. Karen stiffened, her defensiveness kicking in immediately. I already told you in Evans. They were a problem from the start, refusing to follow instructions with the tablet. The spilled water, the child making a scene. And the father. He became very aggressive, started getting in my face, questioning my authority. She crossed her arms. I made the right call. We can't have people like that in the penthouse deck. They become a safety issue. Roman stared at her, truly seeing the ugliness beneath the starched uniform for the first time. The casual prejudice, the entitlement, the abuse of power. People like that. The phrase hung in the air like poison. Karen, we just received a call from the crew of the cruise line. Karen's eyebrows shot up. Ryan Gallagher? Why would he be calling about this? To commend us for following procedure, I hope. The captain let out a short, sharp breath that was almost a sob. The sheer, colossal ignorance of the woman in front of her was breathtaking. He called to inform me, Roman said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, that the man you described as an aggressive threat, the man you just had hauled off his ship in front of his children, was Marcus Harris. Karen's face was a canvas of confusion. Marcus Harris. Who's that? Some politician. A celebrity who thinks he's above the rules? No, Karen, Roman said, the last of her patience shredding away. Marcus Harris owns a private equity firm that bought this cruise line 2 years ago. He's the chairman of Sapphire Holdings. He is, for all intents and purposes, the man who owns this company. The color drained from Karen Jenkins's face. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The smugness, the confidence, the 30 years of self-proclaimed authority all evaporated in an instant, leaving behind a hollow shell of disbelief and terror. No, she whispered. That's not possible. They didn't. He didn't look, she trailed off, the unspoken prejudice lay bare. He didn't look like he could own a cruise line. We've been ordered back to the dock. Roman continued, her voice hardening into steel. We're going to reconnect the gangway. And we are going to wait for what? Karen stammered, her eyes darting around the galley as if looking for an escape route from the reality that was crashing down upon her. We are going to wait for Mr. Harris and his family to reboard the ship, the captain said. And you, Karen, are going to stay right here. You will not speak. You will not move. You will do nothing until you are told, as if on cue. The captain's voice came over the PA system. Not her own, but that of her first officer, Evans, his voice trembling slightly. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first officer. We apologize for the delay. We are experiencing a minor operational issue and have been instructed to return to the dock. We'll provide you with more information as soon as we have it. We appreciate your patience. A wave of confused murmur swept through the deck. The ship began a slow, ponderous turn, reversing its course in the channel. It was a lumbering, metallic beast, performing a U-turn of shame. Karen leaned against the galley counter, her legs suddenly unable to support her. The reality was sinking in like a series of hammer blows. Her entire world, the small kingdom of the ship's deck where she had reigned supreme for 3 decades, had just been vaporized. She had not just angered a passenger. She had not just made a mistake. She had committed an act of corporate suicide. And she had dragged her captain and her cruise line down with her. Her mind raced, desperately, trying to find a way to spin this, a way to justify her actions. But there was no justification. There was only the cold, stark truth of what she had done, laid bare under the fluorescent lights of the galley. The journey back to the dock would be the longest journey of her life. The journey back to Terminal G. Dock 4 was agonizingly slow. Each foot the ship traveled felt like a step closer to Karen's personal execution. Inside the deck, the atmosphere was thick with tension and speculation. Passengers were whispering, pointing toward the galley where Karen stood, pale and rigid, a statue of dread. Captain Roman had returned to the bridge, leaving Karen to stew in the toxic juices of her own making. Back in the terminal, the Harris family watched as the vessel they had been ejected from reappeared at the window, nosing its way back toward the gangway like a dog with its tail between its legs. The terminal agent, Emily, who had been nervously making calls, rushed over to them, her face a mixture of awe and terror. Mr. Harris, she said, her voice trembling. The ship. It's returning for you. I am so sorry for what happened. We had no idea. We were just following the head of services report. It's not your fault, Emily, Marcus said, his tone softening slightly. He could see she was just a cog in a machine that had malfunctioned horribly. You were doing your job. The gangway reconnected to the ship with a solid thunk. A moment later, the ship door opened. But it wasn't a terminal agent who appeared. It was Captain Eva Roman herself. She walked onto the gangway, her captain's hat in her hand, her face etched with a profound and humbling apology. She stopped directly in front of Marcus and Elena. Mr. Harris, Dr. Harris, she began, her voice clear and steady, despite the career-imploding crisis she was navigating. There are no words to adequately express how sorry I am for the appalling treatment your family received from my crew. From me, I backed my senior attendant's judgment without question, and in doing so, I failed you. I failed my cruise line, and I failed in my duties as a captain. It was a complete and inexcusable breakdown of professionalism and basic human decency. I offer no excuses, only my deepest, most sincere apology. Marcus looked at the woman before him. He saw no deception in her eyes, only the raw shame of a professional who knew she had made a terrible error. Thank you, Captain. Marcus said simply. We accept your apology. He then looked past her toward the open door of the ship. However, the issue is not resolved. I understand, sir, Roman said. Please allow us to escort you back to your seats. We will handle the crew situation. Marcus led his family back onto the ship. If their first walk had been a gauntlet of shame, this one was a procession of vindication. The silence in the deck was now one of awe. Every passenger now understood what had happened. The power dynamic had been inverted with spectacular force. As they reached their seats in row 1, they saw Karen. She was standing near the galley, frozen in place, her face ashen. As Marcus approached, she seemed to shrink. The formidable, authoritarian attendant was gone, replaced by a terrified, broken woman. She opened her mouth, a desperate plea for mercy forming on her lips. Mr. Harris, I am so sorry. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. Marcus stopped in front of her. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just disappointed. He saw in her the personification of a sickness, a casual prejudice that festered in the dark corners of the world, poisoning everything it touched. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His quiet words landed with the force of a physical blow. A mistake, Miss Jenkins? He said, his voice level and cold. A mistake is forgetting to offer a passenger a pre-departure beverage. A mistake is getting a drink order wrong. What you did was not a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to see my family as a threat. You chose to humiliate my wife and children. You chose to abuse your authority based on nothing more than your own preconceived notions. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the silent cabin. You were worried about the comfort and safety of your passengers. Well, I am worried about the comfort and safety of all 30 million passengers who travel this cruise line every year, and I cannot have someone with your judgment, your character, responsible for any single one of them. He looked past her to the two security officers who were now standing just inside the ship's door with the terminal agent Emily. They were waiting for his signal. Your employment with Sapphire Seas Cruises, Marcus Harris said, delivering the final verdict, is terminated, effective immediately. Please gather your personal belongings. These officers will escort you off my ship. A strangled sob escaped Karen's lips. Please, she begged, tears now streaming down her face, washing away her carefully applied makeup. I have worked here for 35 years. This job is my life. Please don't do this. You should have thought of that, Elena said, her voice cutting like a scalpel. Before you decided to make my crying 7-year-old daughter your target, it was over. The security officer stepped forward. One of them gently took Karen's arm. Ma'am, let's go. Defeated, humiliated, and utterly broken, Karen Jenkins was led down the same aisle she had lorded over for decades. It was her own walk of shame, but unlike the Harris families, it was a final one-way journey. She didn't look at the passengers, their faces a blur of condemnation and pity. Her career, her identity, her life as she knew it had ended in the space of a single catastrophic hour. As she was escorted off the ship, a spontaneous, quiet applause broke out from a few passengers, including David Park, the lawyer. It wasn't a cheer of victory, but a sigh of relief that justice in the small, contained world had been served. The ship door closed once more. The cruise line had been cleansed. Marcus Harris took his seat, settled in, and looked at his family. The ordeal was over. Now the real work would begin. The rest of the voyage to the Caribbean was surreal. The remaining stewards moved through the deck with a quiet, almost reverential efficiency, their faces a blend of fear and relief. Captain Roman made another announcement, apologizing to all passengers for the unprecedented delay and thanking them for their patience. She didn't explain the details, but she didn't have to. Everyone on board knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Captain Roman personally served the Harris family their meals, her professionalism now tinged with a deep and genuine respect for Marcus. However, the incident was far from over. Firing Karen Jenkins was merely trimming a weed. He was interested in pulling out the entire root system. The moment they returned to port, the corporate machinery of Sapphire Holdings, which had been holding its breath, roared to life. He spent the next 48 hours in a series of intense meetings with his executive board, the legal department, human resources, and the heads of the attendants union. Liam's crystal-clear video was reviewed. Statements were taken from David Park and 3 other passengers in the penthouse deck, who volunteered to be witnesses. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. Karen Jenkins was, of course, officially fired for gross misconduct. The union, after viewing the video, declined to even file a grievance. Her career in the maritime industry was over. The digital footprint of the incident, once it leaked, would ensure she would never work in a customer-facing role again. She tried to sue for wrongful termination, but the lawsuit was dismissed before it even reached a courtroom. She lost her pension, her travel benefits, and her reputation. She sold her home and moved to a small town in the Midwest, a ghost of her former self. Forever defined by one afternoon of unchecked prejudice, her karma had hit back. Not with a single blow, but with the slow, crushing weight of total consequence. But Marcus Harris's response went far deeper. He wasn't interested in just punishment. He was interested in prevention. First, he had a long private meeting with Captain Roman. She had offered her resignation, fully expecting to be fired. Instead, Marcus saw in her a powerful, teachable moment. "You made a mistake, Captain," Marcus had told her, his voice firm but not unkind. "You trusted a subordinate when you should have investigated. Your protocol was to back your crew. But your first duty is to the truth. You get to keep your job on one condition. You will become the face of our new training initiative." And so began the Harris Initiative, a mandatory, top-to-bottom overhaul of Sapphire Sea's cruises' customer service and crew training programs. Captain Roman, humbled and profoundly changed by her experience, became its most powerful advocate. She traveled to every crew base, from Fort Lauderdale to Barcelona to Tokyo. Telling her own story, she spoke of the dangers of implicit bias, of the difference between crew authority and crew abuse, and of the critical importance of questioning a report that seems unjust, no matter who it comes from. Marcus allocated $10 million to develop a new, state-of-the-art training program using virtual reality scenarios modeled directly on the incident from Voyage 712. Attendants were now put into simulations where they had to de-escalate conflicts, identify their own biases in real time, and make judgment calls under pressure. The program, developed in partnership with leading sociologists and psychologists, became the new gold standard in the industry. He also instituted the Quiet Seas program, a discreet way for passengers to report crew misconduct in real time via the onboard Wi-Fi, with the report going directly to a special monitoring team at the OCC, bypassing the crew entirely. It was a check and balance against the absolute power an attendant could wield in the middle of the ocean. The story of what happened on Voyage 712 inevitably leaked to the press. It became a national sensation. CEO kicked off ownership, the headline screamed. But Marcus, a man who loathed the spotlight, used the media attention to control the narrative. He gave one and only one interview. He didn't focus on his own family's humiliation. Instead, he spoke about the larger issue of systemic bias and what Sapphire Sea's Cruises was doing to fix its own house. The company's stock, after a brief dip, soared to an all-time high. Passengers sailed with Sapphire not just for its luxury, but because it had publicly and decisively stood for something more than profits. A week after the incident, the Harris family was sitting in their New York apartment. Chloe was drawing a picture of a ship, a smiling pink ship with a friendly captain. Liam was showing his father the comments on a news article about the incident, most of them overwhelmingly positive. Elena came and sat next to her husband, putting her head on her shoulder. "You turned something so ugly into something good," she said softly. Marcus looked at the picture Chloe was drawing. "We had to," he said. "You can't just own a company, Elena. You have to be responsible for its soul." He had faced down corporate raiders, hostile markets, and economic downturns. But the battle on Voyage 712 was different. It was personal. And in winning it, he hadn't just saved his family from a moment of humiliation. He had subtly, powerfully reshaped the culture of the entire company that bore his name, ensuring that no family ever again would have to endure what has had. The story of Karen Jenkins and the Harris family is a powerful reminder that our actions, no matter how small they seem, can create ripples with devastating consequences. It's a story about prejudice and power, but it's also a story about grace, accountability, and the incredible potential for positive change when good people refuse to accept injustice. Karma in this story wasn't just a satisfying moment of revenge. It was the catalyst for a fundamental shift, forcing an entire corporation to look in the mirror and become better. If this story resonated with you, If you believe in standing up to prejudice and holding people accountable, please take a moment to support our channel. Hit that like button to let us know you want more content like this. Share this video with your friends and family to spread the message. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story. What did you think about Marcus Harris's response? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Thank you for listening.